Was reading the guidance. Half hour, something was changing. Just a few months, essentially. So,
I don't get it. I mean, I looked at it, but I didn't really.
I think I have a good idea for what the changes are, so some of it's probably relevant. Anytime you think the legislature is gonna want to do something, they do something else.
Yeah.
Alright, so my last week and a half before it was bad, but it's not. Last week was great. Feel really weird. All night of bullshit. And I was bored, not great. I was doing so good until. So I knew first, so I did it, so it was Friday, I left early. Thursday, I had to get my dog into the bed.
That's right, or it's really killed it.
Yes, Wednesday. But there was a lot. Oh, Wednesday, our nanny asked her, she was sick. No, that's not right. Wednesday, our nanny had a doctor's appointment, so she had to go. Tuesday, she asked to go. She was sick. So that's why that is the way it is. It makes me wonder. Guess anybody else? I might not be here after December 1st, I might get fired.
Well,
You're looking for a job.
sitting at 45 here, and once that Joel, everyone, they staff up a little bit more. Christine starts at your full time.
That's right.
And we let us know if there's, they usually go for stuff.
Well, that would be better than me fucking on to Asia.
I heard a little bit.
I think you would be less heartbroken about me coming here than yeah. Just,
Low drive.
Yeah. I think,
Let's look at her travel Instagram page.
She an influencer?
right. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned that thing you mentioned to me that, you know. Well, even. You can,
Oh, no. Not very clear about it.
yeah, the keep hearing.
No, I,
Yeah. How do you guys?
what was the lesson keeper?
Keep hearing, Grant's Corner, he's on the BCA.
I mean, he made something.
That's supposed to be. Not up on the screen.
I need to write a newsletter. I came up with a few colors.
Okay.
I really have a lot because I'll let you two tell me what you think.
thing.
Right.
And I let Suzanne know. On the. So thank you.
Okay, yep.
So much you know that.
Hmm.
That's why I tried to remember, was actually a pain in the stomach.
That's not the bad.
Apparently they can be pushing. Or that was the depression.
It's got black.
I've known him as a dreamer, but not that kind.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Didn't pop here.
Yeah.
Black.
No,
So,
Yeah.
as long as you're not driving.
Yeah.
We have some neighbors or.
There's that. Remember the guys with the red, that place, probably.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe it's all about you, there's some kind of.
That's good. Grand scheme of things.
I mean, we could do a red that's chopped down.
I'm not making it. So.
There's a big red.
Later, things about it, Carol did something, but.
That lighter green. That. That's kind of got a purple blue trim on it, like, that's a little not real greenish.
Do you think you could text me some of your
Yeah,
favorite ones, that way I can pull some color swatches that you can look
I
at?
brought, actually, there's that too.
You brought some color swatches?
I have them in my car,
Okay,
but it's a book later, that has some, but I was at one here once. I wanna leave it to you guys, it's a short one, but I get.
said that we stole one,
I can learn it to you,
said,
as long as I get it back.
I'm not sure you get it, man.
Yeah.
But instead of me hearing more capable, but you wanna tab some stuff in the book? Like put it,
Okay, I'll do that.
post-it tabs or something?
I'll do that, I mean, like, what do you think, like? Greens, red,
I like the greens that you have on there.
yeah,
It'd be good too to look at the houses next door.
the houses next door are like really neutral, like one of them is what the daycare is, and it's like
Yeah.
whitish and
Their side is, yeah, the,
tannish or something, like, I mean,
so it's pretty flexible then for,
yeah,
still wanna be monotonous.
yeah. Yeah, this is the one that, well, there's that one, that one is lighter green, that would be like a magenta, not red. There's red, but not much.
That's what everyone says.
That's too much probably, I kind of like it, that's probably too much.
I just think I don't know how it would go, like, when we decorate.
Right, that's what I'm thinking, right, that's why I'm trying to stick with the greens, most of the greens.
Better job.
Yeah, something else stand out.
That's, you know,
Here, this is kind of my favorite one, it's, we've got a dark green door,
Yeah, that would be nice too.
Yeah, it's great.
If we did the red door.
So-
I know, there's that, red, so, the second one, give the red, to the red. The lights. You know, like,
Cool,
you.
yeah.
We can give it to.
This, that's cute. Really darker green, or make it like nice. To have silver, I like rainbow. I think that's right.
Yeah. That one too.
Yeah, it's up to me.
Well, I wanted to do it a little bit. Yeah, oh, I think about that too, yeah. That's cute, that's what I got, I know, you got it, yeah.
I don't know that much of
How you doing, buddy? That's all right, I got something supposed to be here in about 5 minutes, but I got a little bit of rest, before I talk about it.
He decides.
Just want to set up time and he probably. To whatever. Try to find something that's on your schedule. And then the council will go into the.
Yeah, that's why I,
Like that, and it's just like, that's very.
that's very.
Yeah, so I got you.
Gingerbread, yeah, no.
If I let you know. You know, so they're good, they're just happy with that, so you get there's not the time I think
Yeah, routines and.
Take care, I'll be in touch. Thanks, Tyler. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or she takes a message.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if it's worth it.
This is one that could kind of go Christmassy, or tree and, you know, like. Business stuff kind of, so it's kind of simple
Yeah,
on the back.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Busy bee.
You.
Yeah, we did a search warrant at a defender's house Friday night.
I ain't told that.
That's where my house endings. That's great.
He just. So I said that meeting today, I think I'm gonna go ahead and try to terminate him. And we forgot. He was upset when we took his computer and phone, he seemed to be more upset when we took my computer and phone, I think that's what he was bringing Steve to.
You should go learn, but I'm asking you this.
Wow, you have to take a long list.
Yeah, I think we need to read.
Yeah.
Oh, I grew up, there's something like that.
That's
Yeah, and it's really known for, when you go to my physical managers,
Yeah.
I did think.
Well, I was also gonna
Like,
say,
right.
that Joel and Megan share screen.
What did you say?
So that's.
You met Joel and Megan, so you share a screen. Can't find her sister, how it's been, so she said, like, hey, that's just.
So.
No, it's okay, well,
She sent me a thought,
Yeah.
like, yeah. So if I got some from my Saturday, so much I want to stop scratching.
Sure.
Yeah, and then it was kind of medicine stuff, so I mean. I almost picked up a collar.
Does he need to share the screen?
Yeah.
I'd be like, what's, I mean, how?
Yeah.
You don't want.
It's not beautiful.
That's your team, but, they don't need anyway, that's probably.
If he-
That's a deal.
If he can hear us, then if he can request to share his screen, I can let this.
Yeah, anyway, that's, you guys, the rest we already have to take out, I just did that just because.
I like that.
It's looking pretty, yeah.
That's not bad.
I actually, I didn't too bad. Did it in. Anyway, these days.
Already streamed.
Okay, yeah.
He just needs to, he just needs to like request to share, and I think they'll be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So far,
Oh, good. Want me to crush Sharon?
Yeah. This is a, she's good.
If I make this post, I'm ready to like mess up the screen.
Stream, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can wait.
So the other two marked cars, the two IE cars marked outside his house, I called Anthony, and so we started the search for me. So he didn't want to go send the one, so he could tell me down $2, so I.
Several
Down his back, he said, yeah, we're on the phone there now, get ready to tell him, you're not done, he's from there. So he comes like, you know, I could have police, I said, yeah, they give us guns, matches, everything. So we started, that's how.
The response was like, here's why we can't separate them.
So it's quite exciting.
Great, well, okay, fine. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. And then she
Yes,
was like,
absolutely.
oh, yeah, you guys already have your cloud, sorry, and I'm just like, from your. So is it that you don't.
Be a lawyer.
Panel, right?
You know,
Put it down.
it's interesting bringing that.
I know, she did, but, then I don't know if she's, I need a salesperson.
Anyway.
So turned out.
So I called her and I was, I said, this is pretty good.
She's got a less.
His house and what's on the front.
Very like.
Right here.
That's what I'm like, yeah, like. We also let.
Yeah.
And I know that they're about to have you right now.
They are, they're many.
I mean, over here, no, like. That's definitely something that I think will talk. Student is, student does. But what they just finished.
Yeah, that's like, that's nice color green.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm getting Barbarella or if I'm getting Princess Cat.
Yellow now, right?
Yeah, that yellow, that's not the one. I think that was part for.
Barbarella.
Showing out with you.
Oh, yeah.
Joey, that's dangerous.
Yeah, that's, I don't know if she's Barbarella in the morning or Princess Cat.
Good show there.
Yeah.
Oh.
No. Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah.
They still do.
You know, yeah,
Yeah, there should be.
it's, yeah,
They're all this kid house.
yeah, my house is this.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. Every day is something new.
What was she today?
She was definitely Barbarella.
Okay.
You were.
We'll talk about what's recorded, so there's other things to do. Especially when we have a case through.
Daycare.
That's a cash on game thing.
I don't know. Sure, then the lives I have.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready?
Tonight, so I can give it to them.
This is text, go. All right. Call currently, count down to the word, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Oh, Madam Clerk, Treasurer Cole.
Council President Rector Heidi.
Here.
Council Vice President Mike Wolski.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Zeitker.
Here.
Councilmember Ed Loud. Councilmember Anna Pete. Here.
All right, consent agenda, we have the claims register and the council minutes from September 17th. I'm assuming everybody's already had a chance to review those. Do I have a motion?
I'll make motions. We approve the consent agenda.
Okay. I have a motion and a second, any additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, or otherwise have it. Citizen comments, 5 minutes.
Email for each.
Okay. Staff reports, chief.
Obviously, we've seen the news and I apologize for this last incident, not getting anything out sooner. These were, isolated incidents, obviously. The news media, they did come out to do an interview with Mark that ended up being a little bit more of a not so pleasant highlight on our town, so I do apologize for that. That wasn't what we thought was being intended on. It was just supposed to be about that incident alone. Unfortunately, we're still open investigations that we haven't closed out, so I can't really go into detail on those publicly. If you have questions on those, I'll be happy to answer those privately. But we're trying to see what we can do to kind of counteract that press on that, because we have had really, since we've done the extra patrols and the other things in town, we've had really good success in having the things that we were having problems with prior to that to kind of cease, and these were just isolated incidents at these residences that just unfortunately happened, so.
I know we're doing Trail and Treat at Lions Park next week. Would it be better at some point in time to try to get that more back into the community, maybe over there? Is that more positive?
I don't know that that's necessarily the issue at that point. I mean, these are adults that are participating in these incidents, so I'm not sure that that would even.
That's not a positive aspect of the kids.
It would be, and I think the kids, we get in there, and especially during Halloween time, we still go out and we still pass out candy, and that seems to be a huge thing with the children, and it's on Halloween night too, so we still engage and do it that way, but you know, you can't help what these adults are doing.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Lips.
Yeah, the comprehensive plan kicked off this week. Pastor Levine was, actually here in town the past couple of days conducting interviews with multiple stakeholders. There was also the steering committee met, and the community vision workshop. It's pretty well attended, we have a steering committee there, and good, almost matching presence of residents, it's by 180 some in the room. Which is decent turnout for a lot of our engagement things. Beyond that, I know they're going to be preparing kind of an initial report, current conditions of things that start in place. They're doing a desk scan of all our current things like our park master plan, the existing comp plan, which is time review, transportation master plan, those type documents to figure out what's still relevant, what's not. One of the things I wanted to highlight that if you aren't able to make it, they do have, if you want to take back your HOAs or your neighborhoods or groups, they're kind of DIY kits to run through the same activities and gather feedback and kind of data sets that help bolster that process. So Christine has all that information, packets, and her and Hannah, either one could kind of help you with that if you're interested in doing that at your HOA or local neighborhood group, or I don't know if you have a good sized group in that series or something like that. Do it pretty much anywhere. So all the feedback and data we can get, we want to. We've invited people from both counties, we had hired out here, just all kinds of good people show up to give feedback. But Christine are very curious about how this went, because staff, as I said, they want it to be unbiased and not basically. We won't know who said what, we'll just know the general report and feedback.
If you have an HOA that wants to do it, but maybe doesn't want to lead it themselves, I'm happy to go out and do those DIY kits. And we're also considering some open staff hours where people can come in and do it as well here, and just kind of facilitate some mapping or something. So we'll keep you posted on it if we end up with any of those set hours. And the green beans, looking at maybe some pop-up opportunities to do the DIY kits as well, that will probably work with them. So we'll keep you guys posted so you can push it out.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, whole business consideration of ordinance 2025 -15 budget. I know we finally got some numbers in from Hancock County. Did we have to change the budget at all?
No, it came in right where we needed it. Once the CNAP came through, our projections were really, was spot on. Erica did a really good job working through that, so. Nothing's changed with this ordinance or our recommendations. It's our recommendation still for the council to consider, executing this ordinance so the Form 4 can be submitted to the state.
Any questions? Very good. Anything good?
I'm good.
I'll take a motion.
Make a motion, we approve ordinance 2025-15. As presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, initial discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
All
you.
right, Mr. Lynch, we have number 2.
This ordinance was introduced at your last meeting. We've made no changes to it. We're recommending you guys consider adopting this ordinance. If you guys adopt this, we'll start pretty readily reaching out to the businesses, particularly the ones that in the past would have been in violation of this ordinance, and start doing some educational, some meetings with them. So we're not just immediately ramping up. We've also talked with Suzanne and Gavin's a little bit, Christina and I talked, so we're getting everything together for that committee that would then be responsible for meeting with and tracking. So,
All right, is there any questions on the 2025-16 document of public safety nuisance policy? Did you have it? No? Yeah. Okay, I'll take a motion. Moved.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Well, second.
Yeah, Joe moved.
Sorry,
Oh, you're fine. Has to be done. Yeah, you're fine.
I second.
I have a motion and a second, any additional discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. New business?
No, sir. Well, training, yeah.
I was just getting ready to be out of here. Doing the next thing. About that, Ben. Thank you, buddy. Everyone say the way.
Jules gonna request to share his screen so we can put it up there.
Absolutely.
All the slides for you guys as well.
Right, you should be voting.
No.
This is also for anybody that is on the computer staff, anybody that's on SharePoint as well. Do anything like this.
There we go. Hey. All right, so just what you guys wanted on the meeting that you could have gotten now, you know, 7:07, some council training. You know, in going through this, I spent a lot of time really trying to figure out what things we should cover, because we could sit here all night going over all the things that I planned. I promise you, I will try not to.
So we should have about 7 or 9.
I'm gonna try. So you doesn't matter how the way to go. One of the things that is always good to touch base on is the open door law. And you guys are governed by the open door law. So what is it? It is actually 16 separate statutes. But at the end of the day, it's the spirit of it. So when you look at 514-1.51, it talks about the purpose of this chapter are remedial and its provisions are to be liberally construed with the view of carrying out its policy. That policy is that the business of the government will be done in the open so that the voters can see. That's the overarching policy of the open. But it does beg some questions as to who does it apply to. So under the statute, it applies to the public agencies. Public agencies are any county, township, school, corporation, city, town, political subdivision, or other entity by which your name is designated. So you guys are a public entity. It is also all budget reviewed by the Department of Government Finance or government body, so if any entity has that, or audited by the state board of accounts. Business corporation, local subdivision, or state of Indiana, that issues bonds for the purpose of constructing facilities. So public agencies is a very broad, definition, which covers the vast majority of your different governmental bodies. Includes any advisory commission, committee, body created by statute, ordinance, or executive order to advise you guys of, except for our medical staff or committees of that, but to advise you in your decision-making process, so your planning commission, or all these other boards that you have, are those sorts of boards, so they fall under, what a public agency is. And it applies to official action. So when we talk about official action under the open door law, it includes the receipt of information, and this is what gets council members sometimes is that you receiving any information regarding the town is official action by the town, by this body. If there are 3 of you in a room and you're receiving information regarding the town, that is a quorum of the council, and you are taking official action by the receipt of it. So that's why we have to kind of make sure who's going to be at what meetings, that we don't have 3 at one time, because if we do have 3, my recommendation is that we advertise that as a joint meeting at that body, so that we'll cover one. Deliberations, recommendations, establish policy, make decisions, or take final action. And take final action has specific, language, but stuff that is expressly provided by statute that keeps it from the open door is going to be executive sessions. For executive sessions, you have this long list of things that qualify for executive sessions. The important thing to take away from this concept is that you have to have or meet one of those items specifically. And if you're going to have an executive session, you need to advertise that specific item. So you need to go 514, 1.5, 6.1 to receive information or perspective. Or you can go to that subsection. Without that, it will be a violation because you haven't established that it is one of those that is expressly prohibited by the statute. Discussing job performance of individual employees qualifies for that. That's why when you have a police merit commission, you can actually have hearings in executive session. But you just can't take final action. Because when you look at that statute, this last section here, final action must be taken at a meeting open to the public. So using the police discipline example, we can sit here in executive session and the police merit commission can hear the evidence regarding the disciplinary matter in executive session. But in order to make a final determination as to whether to impose the suspension or termination or whatever the chief is asking for, you have to exit that executive session, go into an open meeting and take action there. So that's because final action means the vote of the governing body on any motion, proposal, resolution, rule, regulation, ordinance, or order. So any final vote, you are saying all those in favor, that has to be in public. Cannot do that in executive session. Official action, talked about this one, I repeated this slide. So I want to talk about a few PAC opinions that have come out. What I'll call recent. And recent is 2022 in this because since 2023, I've not had a summer associate go through and read every single PAC opinion in the previous year. And so I have the data from 2022. In 2022, we had 170 PAC opinions that were issued, 23 complaints that the Public Access Council considered were open door violations. 16 of those 23 were found to be violations. And so as an example of one, 22 SC 102, University Board met to consider strategy whether to consider or reorganize the student academic appointees as a unit. That analysis came down to a final action decision. So what they did in this executive session was an executive session to consider this not under one of those criteria. They did not take final action. They did not take a vote on it. And because they didn't take a vote on it, and then it didn't move anywhere, so the student union wasn't considered a union, but the student organization wasn't considered a union, there was no violation of the public access or the open door law. Under 22 FC 132, township board held an executive session to discuss a fire department merger. So this is when you have, oftentimes you'll have a merger for territories being formed or things of that nature. They advertised it under personnel matters, but they failed to list the statutory reference. So what I was talking about, got to go through that statutory reference if you're gonna have an executive session. This was considered to be a violation of the. And so they were subject to that. 22 FC 125 is probably the most important one that came out. So this was involving the public hospital that filed for writ of social. So what happened was they were involved in a lawsuit, went to appeal, they lost on appeal. The executive director of the hospital made the decision to ask the Supreme Court to weigh in on this. And the executive said, I had that because it's a delegation of the executive power. The complaint was on file because they said, hey, the board didn't take action on this to take it to the Supreme Court. When the Public Access Council looked at this, he said, this was a violation of the open program. Now, there is a clear distinction here that I want to talk about. This is not saying that Ben cannot take action on those executive or administrative things that happen. What this analysis came down to is asking the Supreme Court of the state of Indiana to take or an action which will incur a lot of taxpayer dollars to prepare the case in front of the Supreme Court. That is not an everyday action, right? That's not an administrative thing. That's not something that this council will consider the day-to-day operations of the town. So what Ben would not be able to do is say, hey, I think we need to go ask the Supreme Court of the United States to take our case on this First Amendment claim. That would be an overreach of the delegation and should come to final action because of the importance that's tied to it. So there's this spectrum that you're looking at. If it's a day-to-day stuff that Ben normally does, then yes, that makes sense that we can do that as the delegated authority of the executive. But if it is something that's out of the ordinary, not commonplace, that's where we'll want to take it. Bring it back to this council. Going back to the open door law, when we look at this, purpose of permitting members of the public is to observe and record your meetings, okay? So when you do have an open meeting, it is to allow the public the ability to come in, observe you, and record you, not necessarily to engage with you. They added this section that applies to the governing body of the school, corporation, or the charter school. They have to allow public oral comment in all of their meetings. And this really came up right after the pandemic, and when parents were seeing what some of the information was being given in schools, and all of that stuff coming out of Loudoun County in Virginia. The Indiana legislature said, you know what, we don't want that here, so parents have the opportunity to go to your school corporations to comment, but they can't silence you. That does not apply to us. You do not have to allow public comment at meetings. If you decide to allow for public comment at meetings, you can set the period for taking the public testimony, the public comment. And if it is going to be on agenda items, and this is important, you have a comment period for the public on non-agenda items. I think the public wants to speak. But if you're going to allow the public to speak on a topic that is in front of you for consideration, that time frame has to be either before or during your consideration if it cannot be. Okay. You can limit the amount of time for the amount of time. You can adopt reasonable rules for the public comment, which you have, the time restriction, how they do it, when they do things of that nature. And then if somebody violates those rules or acts in a way that disrupts your operation of meeting, you can have a police escort that person. But that's really gonna be, you're gonna hear this is a violation of the First Amendment. There are certain rules that apply. Now, I will tell you, whenever you're doing something like that, is regarding speech, it really is kind of continued, right? There's a risk continued. There's no risk if you do nothing and you allow it. There's no constitutional potential violation. But anytime you take action, it's kind of a continuum of the risk as you move forward. Removing them from a meeting. Yes, you can do that, but there will be an analysis to see, were they disrupting your operations? Were they committing a crime? Did it rise to the level that you can take this action? So it's not to say that you're completely safe, but you're lower on the risk continuum because you have a statute there that says. Public hearings are different than public comment. So, example of public hearings, they're usually set up by statute, so this is regarding rates and charges. Not that you guys have any experience with that recently, with new rates, but when you have new rates and charges, there must be a public hearing where the public can be heard concerning public rates and charges. And that's important to see that, again, one, you don't have to have public comment in a meeting. They're only allowed to observe and record. In their public hearings, they have the right to be heard on that topic. And that is it. It does not extend to an exchange with you during that public hearing period. My strong recommendation is that when you have a hearing, is to not engage in an exchange, right? The hearing is for you to receive information, whether it's from the public or consultants or somebody petitioning for something. To receive the information, and then once you close up that hearing, you guys deliberate on it, you make the determination based on the information you have. If you start engaging to questions, so somebody says, well, I feel this about it, and what do you think, and there's a back and forth. Now, all of a sudden, all of your discussion with that person from the public is part of the public record of the public hearing. Whenever you have a public hearing, there's going to be some ability to challenge your final decision. Like we saw in the race case, right? By having a back and forth discourse in that, all of what you say now becomes part of that record that's considered in the determination on that. And that is why I say, it's always my recommendation to not engage, right? There are some councils that you have are different commissions that's going to continue to be my recommendation because they want to engage, because they think that they can explain it away and put things at ease. I think it's easier if you let me be the bad guys trying to say, this is an opportunity for you to provide your opinion to the commission or to the council or to the body or to the board. It's not a time to go back and forth and exchange discussions. But that is the reason why I've always said, and you've really heard me say, don't do that. The next big part of this kind of openness is the access to public records. We've all heard about it. Any person can expect a copy of the public record. So anybody in your public can say, I want to see this public record. As long as they identify it with particular, with reasonable particularity, and at the discretion of us, whether that be in writing or can they make their oral requests and things of that nature. We cannot deny, because the person making the request refuses to state the purpose for the request, unless such conditions required by another statute. So essentially, the way I've always read this part is I can't go if, let's say, Ben makes a request to you guys for public records. I can't go back and say, okay, why do you want it? Can't do it. He tells me I wanted to, so stop trustee. Well, guess what? I can't deny it because of that reason. A public record is exactly that, a public record. There are certain records that are absolutely accepted. There's a whole list of these. I just pulled out the ones that really kind of pertain to us. So records containing trade secrets. Why would that apply to us? Well, sometimes you guys have RFPs or RFQs where people give you information regarding their business. That is their proprietary business model or pricing model. That would be a trade secret that would not be subject to public records. Confidential information obtained upon request from us requesting information from somebody else that is confidential in nature. But not just something that is confidential, they say, oh, here you go, how? So there's a clear distinction there. So security numbers that you have in your records, that are in your records, you don't have to disclose. The following information from a call made to a fraud hotline, if you have a fraud. But the identity of the individual who made the call, so it's kind of keeping that person safe. And a report, transcript, audio recording, or other information regarding the call to that hotline. There's a long list of records that are discretionary. That means it is up to you as a town whether or not you can or do not get down. Investigatory records of law enforcement agencies or private leaders and police departments. And while these are discretionary, my position has always been, if, especially in investigatory records, if we can deny it, we deny it. You want to keep those as close to the best as you can. Work by an attorney representing pursuant to state employment or appointed by the agency. So that is stuff that Christina and I work on for you, or stuff that Christina and I request somebody else to prepare at our direction for your consideration. That's attorney work. The reason why I always say keep this confidential is because under the ethical rules, yes, the lawyers have ethical rules. They're the attorney-client privilege, right? That attorney-client privilege keeps absolutely confidential information and that we are advice that we give you that is legal in nature. We cannot waive that attorney, but you can. If you start disclosing attorney work product, there's a potential that you are now disclosing attorney-client privilege information. And then you get into a whole fight of, well, is that disclosure of attorney-client privileged information a waiver of the attorney-client privilege that doesn't take everything necessary? So that's why we always say that. Records that are intra-agency or inter-agency, advisory or deliberative material, including material developed by a private contractor. This one is a fascinating. And we'll get into a case in here in a little bit, but essentially, if you create a record internally, or you are working with another governmental entity that creates a record, intra or inter-agency, that is made for the purposes of deliberation. So we use it to consider something or reach a conclusion on another matter. That can be excluded. The question is, has been in the past, this breakup, intra-agency or inter-agency advisories or deliberative material. Does that mean that just any material that's deliberative in nature is discretionary? So I did that a little bit. And then personal files of public employees and files of applicants. This is a case that just recently came in from the Indian Supreme Court. And it is the FSSA, so Family Social Services Administration versus the Senate. And what, if you've ever dealt with state agencies and the FSA, so however the administrative arms of the state, if you ask for any materials, they're most likely in the past will say, we're not going to give it to you because that's deliberative in nature. That is what they relied upon again and again ever since Growth v. Pence. Now, Growth v. Pence was a case several years ago where Governor Pence was in office. He got a communication from Governor-elect Abbott of Texas, who wanted to bring a lawsuit against President Obama regarding the border and immigration. There was information that was passed between the Texas governor and all of the other agencies, including Governor Pence. There's a white paper that said, here's the legal theory, this is what we want to do. The Supreme Court in that case, so it's a different Supreme Court, came down and they said that deliberative material, because the Pence administration utilized that information to deliberate something, it is not the public record. Now, that was kind of indicative, meaning that wasn't the whole thing, because what they were able to keep it out under was attorney work, private record. But the state has relied upon, and a lot of communities across the state have relied upon this deliberative material since growth. In FSSA v. Saint, what happened was, there was analysis regarding intra or interagency. And the deliberative process. And where the Supreme Court came down was they said, no. That deliberative material thing is not a separate category. It falls under the intra or interagency. So the deliberative material must be created either by you or the other agency that you're working with. It cannot be created by some outside third party to get the deliberative material, because in that situation, you just basically nullify the rest of that statutory section. Because all I have to do is say, Christine gave me this, and now I'm going to use this to deliberate, and therefore I can keep this out of it. Intra or interagency information doesn't apply, so this is going to, should change the way the state has to respond to public access requests. And it's important to keep in mind here what we can or cannot use that exclusion for. Some new legislation that came down that I think you will be interested in. I did not put Senate Bill 1 in here because we did all lines about that. And nobody knows what it really does. But the House Enrolled Act 1461, I think is one that they did want to your attention. Initially, what this was, and this is tied to road funding, is 1461 is going to say, in order for you to qualify for community crossing matching grants, you would have to enact a wheel tax and an excise tax or a law. And through lobbying from AIM and a lot of communities, I know Ben was over there in the State House on this, talking for a long time. We got the legislature to back off a little bit. So what they're doing is, with $100 million that they set aside for the community crossing matching grant, you do not have to be part of, to have a wheel or excise tax. Here's the thing. This year, 2025, the state gave out over $200 million of community crossing matching grant. So for half of the pot, you do not have to have wheel tax and excise tax. But there will be this other pot of money that we're gonna call additional funding, that you utilize for the same things, that you will need to have a wheel tax as calculated by the lane miles distributed flow. The good news that came out of 1461 is smaller communities. So communities with populations under 10,000, you move from a 25% match for the community crossing matching grant to 20%. So it helps out a little bit in that situation until you go over the 10,000. The problem with this is with the wheel tax language, right? It calls into question LOHA. So here's another acronym: local option highway user tax. There are two types of taxes out. You have the wheel tax and you have the excise tax. The way to think about this is the excise tax applies to passenger cars. So what we all drove in probably. The wheel tax applies to trucks that are greater than 11,000 pounds. So you have these two different things. And despite the fact that 1461 says you have to have a wheel tax in place, you can't get away with just passenger wheel tax, because when we look at the two chapters that talk about wheel tax and excise tax for locals, for cities, towns, and counties, 6.3.511 and 6.3.510. 3.511 talks about the wheel tax, but it has this provision in there that says that the fiscal body of an eligible municipality may not adopt an ordinance to impose a wheel tax unless you also concurrently adopt an ordinance under 3.510 to impose an excise tax. And when you go to the excise tax chapter, it has the exact same language. Flip. You cannot enact an excise tax without at the same time enacting a wheel tax. So in order to qualify for that other money or a road fund that's going to be out there, you would have to pass both a wheel tax and an excise tax. And here's where the real rub comes into. You are not the only community. You have Cumberland, you have your geographic boundaries. You have Hendricks County, Hancock County. They have the power to adopt or give tax. And then that's us. If they want to qualify for the additional funding, they have to enact those taxes. If Hancock County enacts those taxes, if you enact those taxes, now the citizens of Cumberland are facing a tax, county and the city or the town. And if you maximize, there are some communities that are talking, oh, this is a great way to raise funds to get road work done. But if you maximize those taxes, and both of you do that, now you are really impacting your residents. So if you're gonna consider this, I strongly suggest having real discussions with the county, say, what are you doing? What is the rate you're gonna impose? But this is something that is out there this year that everybody's just kind of. Yes. So you can go up.
Yeah, I don't know if I can
Absolutely.
ask it here or not, but wouldn't that, if the county and the town both do it, wouldn't that be considered a double tax on the same? item?
It's one of the arguments that's gone back and forth, but it's always leaned that no, AIM and other groups are pushing the legislature to say, hey, make this locked out so that it is municipal or county and not overlapping, but the legislature constantly leans on, we do not hear this as a dual tax.
Yeah, technically from my point, even though I'm, just because I'm sitting, not just because I'm sitting up here. But it should be. The smallest piece of local government should have the first option. And then up through the county, because the county has other means of getting funding that the town doesn't have.
See, I would agree with you, but the problem with that is if
Nobody else does. That's it.
if you adopt that. Then logical. Progression of that is, well, then. The county should be able to enact taxes and take certain states before the state. Because the state has all those other mechanisms. The state is never going to give up an opportunity where they can pass it out at county level. Right? And their argument is, no, the county excise and meal tax is for the county, which then qualifies them for projects or community crossing, the extra additional funding outside of, because county's not gonna come in and do a community crossing matching rate project in your town. You are considered to qualify to get money for community crossing matching grant, the additional funding within your boundaries. It's crap.
But what happens in our situation, say Marion County has a wheel tax, Hancock County doesn't. Can we just pass it in one of our counties, or we have to pass it in the entire town?
That's the fascinating things about you guys, is that you straddle the line,
We are unique.
you are unique. And it is something that I would have to dig in a little bit more to get it. To give you a solid answer.
Look at this, curious.
Right now, the way it talks, the statute reads is that when you pass it, it's the entire of your local municipality. Okay. And you don't have those borders. The question though is, at least until one of the new legislations that didn't go here, you know about it, the Cumberland legislation, to remove yourself out, so you're an excluded community in the Marion County part. You know, what happens then? Does that change that analysis? I don't. But I can get to that, try and get an answer for you. I don't know if I'll get to find it.
Is there like, does the state set the size of the wheel and excise tax?
There's a range. So, for the excise tax, so the person, the pastor would call it, it is essentially, percentage, so a cent range on this. For the wheel tax, it is a actual more heavy dollar. So thinking about the excise tax, that could appear as a $5 excise tax on there. And to think about what will happen is it will be on your registration. You get that white registration, you have all of the other taxes. There will be a box for county excise tax, county wheel tax, a number, and then local excise and excise and local. And so it'll appear on the registration, because that's when they pay this. And so, it depends upon where you go within the range. You can go within the range, and that's why, if you're gonna consider it, you want to start to talk to Hancock County to make sure that you guys are on the lower side. what would be ideal is if the combined total of it doesn't exceed the maximum that one can. At that point, you can make the argument, hey, Hancock County could have imposed the maximum intrude to cost you, let's say, $15 on your car. But because we had discussions, both passed it. We passed a $4, they passed a $6, it's $10, so it's triple the maximum. That's the best case scenario. Actually,
So what if we just did $1? Would that still qualify us for the other money,
I have to go back and look at that range, I think it is a $5.
$5 minimum?
So there's a minimum on what you impose, but that would qualify then for the additional funding.
We do get money from the county for wheel tax and surtax. So, yeah,
Right now, well, that they will disperse that because part of their knowledge is probably goes into that. But for the additional funding, you have to enact.
So does that mean we're gonna lose money if we don't?
There's a lot of discussion about this right now, so. Engineers and builders are very concerned about this because they feel like this is going to drive up road projects. I have the other one. For that $100,000, that's still gonna go out for community crossing matching. We may not get it, right? For this other additional funding. If we impose a wheel tax and excise. We'll have the money that we collect from that. But we may not get all of that, because again, it's a smaller pie. And so you're gonna have the excise and wheel, or the full community crossing, over $200 million that is going to be given out, most likely. Plus, you're gonna have all of these communities that have passed wheel and excise tax. And so there will be more money for road projects than the state will come in. It's gonna come on the backs of the taxpayers, but there will be more money. So I think this is actually going to lead to more work over construction. That's one of the provisions in there, and then additional funding, is that 50 million each year is allocated to Indianapolis.
They have to match it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's very strict uses to put on that extra money for that.
But the way that people have looked at that and what they're thinking is, if Indianapolis doesn't match it, then legislature doesn't necessarily have to back it up.
Correct.
So. We'll see. But this is, I think this is one of the pieces of legislation that isn't getting as much, press as Senate Bill 1, as the impacts of Senate Bill 1. But has the potential to have a pretty big impact on. So. And then I want to finish out on this whole chapter, this is right up your planning bracket. Because you are elected officials, there is this group of statutes that just apply to you. The first one is official misconduct. So as a public servant, as you guys, who knowingly or intentionally commits an offense, performance of your public service, official duties, solicits, accepts, agrees, can read, I don't want to keep up. Essentially, if you use your position in an improper method to try and get money, or you fail, if you're finished your term and you have information regarding the town, if you fail to give that back to the new person that's going to be in your seat, you have the potential of committing official misconduct, and it's a level 6 felony. So we're talking about jail, when you get to the felony, that's the whole real jail time, like misdemeanors and felonies get serious, whatever. It's the lowest level felony in the state of Indiana, but it's still a felony, and I'm sure we won't want that. I skipped bribery because it's super long. But you guys know what bribery is, don't accept money. Don't hold this position to do that, because again, that is a felony. Ghost employment is one that I want to talk about, because it's not exactly, or it has the potential to extend beyond what you think. Normally, people think gross employment is, well, if I'm getting paid to do something that I know that I'm not doing for the town. That's gross employment, and then I don't know. But what the gross employment statute actually does, it extends to any public servant who allows that to happen. So, anybody, any of you who allows someone to receive compensation or work for the town when they're not doing any work for the town, you could face a lawsuit as well. And when you go back and look at some of the investigations and the audits that come through with this, it goes to a point in which the felony is one thing, but what State Board of Accounts and the state police do is they come back for the money. And they make it jointly and separately liable. So let's say that I am the supervising person that's hiring, and I hired Christine, knowing that she's not gonna go to the people, we're gonna pay her today, and she's gonna give me some of that money back behind the scenes, right? That is gross employment. She's liable for paying all of that back, and I am liable for paying. Joint and separate. So there have been a number of State Board of Accounts, special investigative reports that talk about this when gross employment comes in. Not only the individual got paid, but the person who paid. And most of them that would be out of our treasurer's office, so be very careful. Conflict of interest is another. Conflict of interest is when you get a public servant, knowingly or intentionally has a pecuniary interest or derives a profit from contract, purchase, connected with an action or the government entity. Next question, what a pecuniary interest is. A pecuniary interest is any gain for you or a dependent. So you, your spouse, a parent is included in this, a child, stepchild. If there is a contract that ends up with a benefit to any of those protected or not protected, categorized people, that this action, that this council is considering, then you have to be aware of the conflict of interest statute. There is an exception to this. So if, let's say, Joe, you got a contract that you know is gonna come back, that your business is gonna benefit from. First thing you do is you fill out the conflict of interest form. It says, hey, I have an interest in this, this is what my interest is, I'm not going to vote on this, I'm declaring this and giving it to you, council. And he gives it to the council, it has to be done either before that contract is done or within 15 days from the passage of that. This council takes action, saying we understand that, we vote to accept it. And then that form is then put on file at the county circuit court. Then that can be a defense to conflict of interest, because it is done in the public and open for everybody to see. Right? But it applies to essentially your family. It goes down to. The last one, this is sometimes the most troubling thing, is profiteering from public service. The profiteering statute is really for when you are no longer than this, or when somebody is no longer this. It is basically, you can look at it as a 1-year hold-down period. But if during your time on this council, you consider an RFP, consider a contract, you consider whatever, the council may not have taken action. But then you're done with your council, you go work for Taft Law, and one of those things was that RFP. And Taft Law gets that, and we are short of a year. We may run afoul of profiteering. Even though we didn't vote on it, we didn't do anything with it. Profiteering can come into play. And I actually had a case in which I was defending a mayor who she knew that she wasn't running again. She was gonna go into the private area. She was going to work for an engineering firm. A contract was coming up. She said, I am accusing myself, I am not part of this. set up the separate board, you guys do all of this stuff, because she wasn't sure where she was going. So she didn't take part of anything. The way that she was structured in the new employment was that she would only be compensated on contracts that she brought in. It's like a sales kind of agreement. So we thought that she was protected all the way down the line because that contract was not going to result in pecuniary interest to her. There was a overzealous state officer and an overzealous prosecutor who said, well, at the end of the day, once the money comes into that company, it is fungible, and you can't tell me if that dollar ended up in her pocket or not. It is just commingled with all of this other stuff. I don't care what your other contracts say. We had to go back and forth for a long time on this. We finally convinced the prosecutor that that would render essentially the statute void about the whole pecuniary interest in a contract, because you have to have a benefit from the contract itself. You're saying this part of the statute doesn't follow. That prosecutor finally agreed, so we got that taken care of. But I can tell you that state trooper does not agree with that, and I think he's looking for help. So be very, very careful of these. These are these criminal statutes that can apply. I ran through that really quick. It's not 708, but
that quick.
I got them. Happy to take any questions on. My guess is throughout the year, we'll have a couple of things because there is so much stuff. And I would try and keep it in bite size.
He cut himself off.
Yeah.
He got to 26 size and he'd be in trouble if he kept going. Yeah.
I almost made content.
Yeah, some of this budget is just the cover page, just like this.
Okay. That can turn.
Thank you, President.
I told them, I was like, they wanted me, I.
Oh, but great. She was wonderful. Council comments.
I was looking out the window this morning and I saw two officers go by my house on a golf cart on the sidewalk, and I thought about it all day, and I like that. Right, it really put them in, it really puts them in the neighborhood, though. It was a hell of a surprise, really, to think what other neighbors or people might think. I don't know if people continue to do it for weather-wise, but it's just neat,
We're getting a lot of compliments on that.
so, thank you. Yeah, Carson. Thank you, George.
Any other council comments? Future agenda items. Mr. Whips.
You guys have a couple items on there for future consideration. We are working on some employee input updates as well, the feedback you guys consider. And not listed there's financial policies that Erica and they're still talking to get you guys some perhaps informed you. They said last meeting, we want to try to get you guys those for a couple of weeks beforehand, so you can really take them in for having kind of introduction consideration. So, yeah, we're working on a lot of end of year stuff. A lot of ongoing projects, obviously, wastewater plant, talked about last meeting is gonna be another year, probably exactly, looks like it's around that time, complex stuff's gonna be ongoing for good amount of time. So I'm sure you'll have other reports and things coming in future meetings.
We'll take a motion.
If it's on.
Okay.
So.